I'm Polly Warren and welcome to the Positive Perimenopause podcast. This is the place for some positive inspiration to help you through the rollercoaster ride of perimenopause. I truly believe that with the right support, knowledge and wellness tools, you can feel your best yet, because I'm learning this life phase can be a truly exciting and often pivotal time of life. With every episode, my mission is to support and empower you to own your menopause, because it's time to start taking care of the most important person, and yes, that's you. So thank you for being here and sharing your time with me. Now let's dive in. Hello and welcome back to the podcast. I hope you've had a great week and I hope you enjoyed last week's episode, which was all about some useful tips about how to boost your energy, particularly in this midlife stage where our energy, let's face it, can be on the floor. And I took a bit of my own advice this week actually and went and had an hour, an hour and a half reflexology session. Oh my goodness, I was feeling a little bit depleted before and I just went and I booked it and it was amazing. I came out feeling so much more energized, and it's just a really good reminder that these little things we do can make all the difference. And although it can feel like it's a bit of a luxury and a bit of a treat, as the lovely lady who was giving me the reflexology, she said it's not a treat, it's actually a necessity. So I really do encourage you to think, what can you do? It is an investment, but can you do something, just even if it's quite small, for yourself this week, which is going to give you that little bit of a boost, and ultimately everyone around you is going to benefit. So on to this week's episode. This week, my guest is the lovely Zoe Swan. Zoe's story is a story of how her search to feeling good, feeling well, feeling her best during her 40s took her from being a multiple award-winning senior law lecturer to a qualified Kundalini yoga teacher and a wellness and health coach. So at the time, back when she was a law lecturer, Zoe was sure that the anxiety and the recurring sickness was all due to stress. But now, with hindsight, she looks back and realises that perhaps some of it also was due to changing hormones and perimenopause. Zoe is a fine example of how powerful it can be to really listen to those inner niggles and how following your intuition can lead you onto an exciting new path. So Zoe now helps others with their own wellness and has so much wisdom to offer, of which she generously shares so much in this episode. So without further ado, please welcome the very gorgeous Zoe Swan. Hello, Zoe. It's so lovely to have you on the podcast. Thank you for joining me today.
I'm really excited to be here, Polly, and share my experiences.
Can't wait. So Zoe, you've just got the most inspirational, I think is the word, midlife story, because you've had a big midlife transition. Because how old are you now, Zoe?
I am 51.
You're 51.
And I'm fully in my second spring, I believe it's called.
Yeah, so this is really exciting because not that long ago, you were as you describe yourself, a stressed out, overwhelmed, although multiple award-winning senior law lecturer. And now you are a Kundalini yoga teacher, wellness coach, business owner, and a picture of real, true wellness. You are just glowing and you always just look fantastic. So I'd love to start really about asking you, how did this transition come about? What triggered this transition from lawyer to yoga teacher?
I think my journey is interesting, and thank you for all of that, because it's sometimes nice just to hear someone else say it, and then you can actually step back and think, wow, like I left my job in January 2020. Now I have my own business. I'm a health coach, Kundalini yoga teacher, as you say. I also do wellness consultancy with some big organisations. And to think that I'm actually here living this life now, all because I started to listen into my body and know that I needed to make changes and start putting me first it's kind of like, I don't know, it's like, what is that? It's like some kind of, I don't know, it's not luck, because I think I've worked. I've really worked at myself to kind of get myself to a place where I feel good, because I didn't used to always feel good. And interestingly, because we're on your podcast, which is the positive perimenopause, and we've had conversations about, where I'm at with my perimenopause, or am I still in like menopause, etc., etc. When you ask how I've got here, I kind of find it difficult now, reflecting honestly, as to whether I got here just managing stress and supporting myself by developing lots of tools for self-care, and we'll talk about more of those in detail, or whether what I was managing was actual symptoms of perimenopause, but being perhaps slightly ignorant to how they were showing up in my life, because I knew that I was actually in a workplace that generated, not necessarily for everyone, but for me, a real sense of kind of like overwhelm and anxiety at various points, because of the environment that it was, the job that I did, and how it operated. And it was very cerebral, lots of brain work going in there, as well as being really front facing in my role with academics, with students, and with parents. And then I suppose there's a middle ground in between of, was it the stress, the perimenopause, and was it all of that just all coming together to a place where, I constantly felt, I'd wake in the morning quite overwhelmed, feeling a palpable sense of being overwhelmed. And I don't believe that I used to project a lot of that into my daily routines. I did, obviously, with close family, they would experience it. So my husband and my son would get the brunt of me being either like overwhelmed, whether that was emotional or whether it was like a bit angry or irritated, etc., etc. And I think I realized at a certain point that, and it was through a process of elimination, I think. It was kind of like, I loved my job, but I didn't really love how I felt. And I wasn't really sure what I could do, other than I needed to find something to support me. And that first tool was exploring meditation. And I booked myself into the Brighton Buddhist Centre, started going and practicing meditation. And I think for those people that meditate, and obviously I started in a way with quite a prescriptive way of meditating. I was open to it, I needed it, and it worked. Like after the sessions there, I'd have the most amazing sleeps and things like that. And obviously now, I listen to people that say, oh, I can't possibly meditate, it's not for me, it's not something I do, or running is my meditation, or this, that, and the other. And I look at now how I've evolved into obviously being a Kundalini yoga teacher, and the meditations that I work with are, all encompassing. So like, even if your mind is busy, I can get you to meditate with some kind of practice, whether it's breath, whether it's movement, whether it's some sound, whether it's chanting, or whatever. But I think that was my like original foray. And I suppose how I've transitioned out of that space, where I was considered to be a really successful academic. I loved what I did. I was cutting edge at some of the methods of engaging students and supporting them, etc. I was always like really student experience focused, to now still being a teacher, but just a different kind. It has been like my own exploration of like, what can I do to support myself? Like, what can I do? How can I feel good? And then I think what I realized, Polly, is meditation was good. It had to become a non-negotiable. But it wasn't just that. It's, from speaking to all of your guests and obviously friends and things like this, puzzle, isn't it? It's like, we could actually design one. It's like the perimenopausal puzzle. And we're all so really individual and different. And I think once you start appreciating that, it's not just, okay, I need to meditate. That's a non-negotiable. How am I eating? What am I eating? When am I eating? What types of food am I eating? are the foods I'm eating sparking a blood sugar rise? Is that impacting on my hormone production? How's my sleep? Is my sleep good? Because at night the liver does all the work with processing, detoxing. If your sleep is interfered with because you're stressed or because you're perimenopausal or you're not managing your stress, all of these things come into play. So it's not as simple as doing that one thing. So I then went on to qualify as a health coach, and that was transitional as well, in so many ways, not just exploring, like our relationship with food and how we nourish ourselves, but also thinking much more holistically about our well-being, our relationships, our careers, spiritual practice. Do we move? Do we breathe consciously? All of those things. So that just opened up another door, and I was like, oh, yeah, this is all helping. So it helped me again develop my toolkit. But I think, I'm going to say a couple more things because I'm conscious that I'm just hogging.
It's all right. One thing I'm just interested in, so you're 51 now. So how old were you when all this was happening?
So a pivotal thing that happened to me when I was 40 was I had a hysterectomy. So that was 11
Okay.
years ago. But I was already like quite into the throes of my job at that point. So if I think about it, probably got to have been around, like say, 14 years.
Okay. And
Right
when you had your
now.
hysterectomy, did they take your ovaries out or did they leave your
No,
ovaries? They
I
left those
have
in.
everything.
You still had all your
We've got the
hormones.
whole thing going on down there.
Great, great. Okay.
So I've got, yeah, and that's always been really interesting to see like what will happen. And I definitely still have cycles in my body in itself. I feel the cycle. Interestingly, I try and sync it with the moon to see where I'm at cyclically and what I need to do to nourish myself a little bit more during those times. I do use like natural progesterone cream. So that's one of my things that has been like something I've used for a long time. But then I increase that usually around full moon time for me, works really kind of well. So I do that. So it's been a long time, I think. But I think it would have been at least from my like late 30s, early 40s.
Late 30s, early 40s, into your 40s does really coincide with those sort of typical perimenopausal years. Yet that just wasn't on your radar.
I don't think it's been on my radar until I started getting into this space. I think I need to track back and chart, where it was. But I think it definitely could so easily have been, the start of perimenopause. But at the same time as managing stress, and that impact of stress does all the things, doesn't it? Impacts your mood, impacts your sleep. At that point, I would have been having cycles, but I've also always suffered from endometriosis, which is why I had the hysterectomy. So it's that whole kind of like splitting, just gone deeper and deeper, trying to understand it. Because once you get into it, it's more than just doing the meditation. That's good. It helps. It's a non-negotiable because it brings so much spaciousness. It also helps to balance the endocrine system and so many things that I didn't have a clue of before. I just knew that it worked. But the more that I've developed my knowledge in terms of becoming a health coach, then qualifying as a yoga teacher, the more that I can see how these things kind of start to fit together. And that it's not just one thing, it's a series of things, but also, and I know this is something that you talk about and share, Polly, it is also about having balance. It's not necessarily about being totally regimented in that space. And if you are in balance with how you sleep, nourish, look after your mindset, your body, all of those things, then you can allow yourself to kind of like, perhaps have something a little bit different to eat, maybe a later night. Although I know that they just really don't work well. I'll do it occasionally. And then afterwards, I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
What benefit have I gained from that? Maybe it was enjoyable in the moment, but I think that's where my yogic discipline starts to kick in, become much more discerning, much more self-aware about what I need, what serves me. And I think that enables me to stick to doing what I know sort of supports me. And I think the other practice that I haven't shared much about, which links into all of this, is stopping drinking alcohol. And I think for me, that was probably the catalyst that got me into my yoga teacher training. Because as much as I've always practiced yoga, I never ever saw myself as a yoga teacher. Like, if anyone ever said that, I thought, well, that's just seriously not me. And particularly not when I look at, some of the yoga teachers and, the postures, the positioning, that kind of thing. It's just, and being a midlife woman, etc., etc. It's kind of like, I didn't think that was a doable thing. But when I stopped drinking, I think what it enabled me to do, it enabled me to really connect more with my intuition. So to really kind of listen to signs and messages. And that might, to some people, sound a bit crazy. But I think most people know inside what's good for them and what they're doing. It's just whether or not they have that airspace and that time to be able to really hear and then act on it. Because it took me at least 7 years to get the thought of stopping drinking to actually making that becoming a reality. And I think when I made that become a reality, the door opened in so many other ways. So when we go back to your initial question, how did you kind of get here? Like, how did I transition out of, my old world into this? I think living a sober lifestyle has been just like a tremendously huge catalyst. And it's given me things that I didn't even think possible in terms of a way of being and a way of living. And also, I didn't ever realize I could be that disciplined as a person. I used to be the party queen. I'd love champagne. I can still see myself opening the fridge door to get things out. And now the most I'll do is have a sniff of my husband's wine if I get a little deep pang of like, let's have a little bit of that red wine. I just have that. So I think for me, that's been huge. And obviously, in this space, we know the impact of alcohol on our hormone production, estrogen, etc. Not just that, it's how the liver functions, how it interrupts our sleep. It interrupts our sleep, so the liver's not performing optimally, so your hormone balance is skewed. But I didn't have any concept of those things at the time at all. I was just literally thinking, I just want to do things that make me feel good. I don't want to spend ages recovering from a hangover, and I can't exacerbate the anxiety that I feel already. So that was another practice. And I'm not saying everyone should do it, but for me, it's been incredible.
A very quick break to ask you to hit the follow or subscribe button if you haven't already. And if you're enjoying this episode, I'd be super grateful if you could hit those stars and rate it too. Thank you. Well, thank you for sharing it. I mean, it's quite amazing that, how far you've come, Zoe. It's kind of like, you were discovering these tools along the way. And actually, as your business is called the Practice of Wellbeing, it sounds like you've developed these practices to your own wellbeing, but they are practices. They're not, it's not just a one-off, and it just does not just a quick fix. And I don't think any of this is a quick fix. It is a practice, and it's about discovering what works for you. And perhaps because you have this sort of love of learning and knowledge, that perhaps that has really sort of helped you kind of discover new pathways into lots of different areas. So let's just have a little talk about these tools that you have developed, because I mean, you said that initially it was kind of the stress and the overwhelm, which were the sort of what you felt most of, and they were manifesting in heart palpitations in the morning. And
when you wake up and you've got low level anxiety, I'd wake in the night, and then I would have that first thing in the morning as well. It wouldn't be daily, it wouldn't be constantly. There'd be breaks when I didn't experience that. So the physical symptoms of that were very much there. But also I'd have things like, brain overload, where you can't remember things.
Yeah.
You couldn't remember, and my memory's always been amazing. So there'd be some of that kind of like blackout memory stuff. I also used to get the fuzzy brain fog kind of thing that would be going on. But the other thing was, I know I had a really compromised immune system because I had 3 bouts of shingles. And, I was really shocked about that. And I remember having it, getting it diagnosed, lying in my bed thinking, wow, you have really done it this time, because you just think you can keep going. Mentally, I'm a very strong human being and I will keep going. I've always kept going. I'm just like on the hamster wheel kind of thing. And so I did. Interestingly, my second shingles outburst I had when I was commuting to London in the car. I was driving to Greenwich and I got married at the end of term in summer break. And then we went on a holiday to Cornwall for a couple of weeks. But in that time when I was there, I was also indulging in drinking alcohol and eating foods that I since know really don't suit my constitution. Lobster, crab, prawns, like seafood. And when I got back, I felt so exhausted. I thought, my God, like, seriously, what is going on? You've just had 2 weeks off and you come back and I just felt, I can't describe that feeling. It's kind of like a cross between that burnout where you literally feel you just need to be. It's like an incapacitating feeling. And for someone that's like energized and whatever, it's just like, whoa. And then the rash started to appear. And I was like, oh my God, like, what is this? And, went to the doctors, got diagnosis. At that point, I accepted like the antivirals, etc. Didn't really make any difference. So I'd had it once before then. This was a reoccurring bout. And then I had it another time as well. And out of all of those times, I know it was because my immune system was compromised. I was run down, working too long hours. Maybe the sleep was disrupted. Alongside that, though, too, what I'll say is we've got 2 beagles. They're 11. So we also went through, raising the dogs as part of the family. And they get you up and they bark in the night and they disturb like sleep patterns. It's, it's not just necessarily all linked into something, like the stress of the job. Yeah, there could be that, and there is that for many people, but then there's also everyday life and what's going on in everyday life and how those everyday life disruptions, we don't take the time to understand what that means. So what does deprived sleep actually mean for our body at this time as a woman? And at this time as a woman, it's not like you're getting up in the night for babies. No. You might be getting up for like a child that's coming in late or something like that. But obviously at that point, we chose to have 2 puppies, and that was something that there was also that was all in the mix, interrupting the sleep, etc.
It is. It's this constant low grade stress, which we know, chronic stress,
chronic or constant low.
Yeah, exactly. Which, because it's never turned off, means that our adrenals are just constantly pumping out those stress hormones, which means that our other hormones aren't really getting a look in. And it's interesting that it was on your holiday to Cornwall, because it's only really when we give ourselves a chance to actually have a break, and then that's when your immune system can actually kind of start to get, gets a chance to fight something which is actually there. And that's probably why you suddenly went, it all came up.
And I just thought,
yeah, and it just messes, and that's your body's way, wasn't it, of just saying, actually, Zoe, you really need to stop and listen and start taking action, which is what you did.
And it is. And at that time, I would have been meditating, etc. I would have been doing it, but I hadn't like really fully refined all of the practices. So, I hadn't really thought stopping drinking would be something that I would class as a daily practice. Yeah. But it is, because it's something that's so regularly seen in our society. It's the norm that you have a glass of something with whatever it is that you're doing. Things are changing, but it is the norm. So for someone to all of a sudden decide to not make that choice in the same way, it's something that you have to keep coming back to. Like, people could consider maybe their running a practice, or their yoga is a practice, or do you know what I mean? Or journaling is a practice. They're all practices that support us, but I still actively anchor into that space because there are still triggers that come up where you just think, oh, yeah, remember that time when we did this and we had that, or oh yeah, I love that wine or this particular whatever. And you have to keep engaged with it. And I think that's how I do it, by
And
seeing it as a practice.
do you feel that complete abstinence is the only way, rather than having a really nice glass of wine occasionally? Is abstinence the way forward for you?
I think it is for me because I think what happens, and this is just my own personal experience and sharing. Obviously, I see people that are disciplined and they can have their one glass, and that's fine. And I think this is another thing. When I studied my health coaching, I really got to explore a concept that we called bio individuality, and we're all very different, And for me, I think that around drinking, there's so many associations that you need to think about. When you have the alcohol, when did you last eat? Are you drinking on an empty stomach? Because if you drink on an empty stomach, it's going to have like the blood sugar, it's going to be impacted, depends on where you are in your cycle, your month, etc. Plus, it just links with how your brain is chemically is chemically wired. Like you have that alcohol and it starts to impact on your decisions, your choices. So that one glass is really nice. And to that space, you might think, well, that was so nice. I might just have a few more sips or another glass. So I suppose it just links into, number one, your reason for wanting to stop. And for me, I just think it's an impact of, say, the sugar in the body and what that does in terms of balance. Yeah, I could probably precede it by having like some nuts or some greens or some vegetables or drinking with some food. That would help to mitigate it. But I still don't necessarily think it takes away that feeling that, oh, I just have one more. There's just one more. And when you're out and around people, that's the thing. There's the one more thing. Oh, just have one more. Oh, you're not going, are you? Just have one more. Oh, I've got this bottle. So-and-so said this, or you used to love this. This is your favorite. There's all of these associations. And so, it's that judgment call for me. Like, it's not, I don't see it as an all or nothing because I actively embrace it as an active, positive choice that really supports me.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the way that I do it. And I'm really fortunate that people that I have as friends and family, etc., and spaces that I'm in really, really acknowledge and accept that. So it's not, I haven't felt it to be too much of a challenge. It is initially when you go through your first year. First year is a thing. Like you need to experience all of the things without your alcohol association. But once you get that under your belt and you just keep coming back to it's a bit like Simon Sinek, what is your why? So I just have to come back all the time to why. Why? My why is I just want to feel amazing. I want to feel good.
I've flirted with it, and I've always been quite a big drinker, a big party kind of person. Now I know that how it makes me feel, so I just don't drink during the week at all, ever, or very rarely. But I do still love a drink. And, I've just been to a wedding in Prague and my God, they are big drinkers over there. And of course, as you say, I have one drink and then it leads to the next and then it leads to the next. And my husband isn't helping because I'm going to go, I will always say I'm going to drink really intentionally. This is what he always laughs about. It's just Polly's drinking intentionally. And I woke up with a sore head on Sunday. The worst thing is then sort of go, gosh, I really didn't need to drink that much. And you start beating yourself up.
Well, yeah.
And I always say to everybody and to my clients and to anybody, it's like, well, if you're going to drink intentionally and be prepared for the consequences because that's what's going to happen. So don't beat yourself up. But even I am learning about that. So I didn't drink in January or February this year. I felt absolutely blooming amazing. But I found it difficult in terms of the social pressures around me, and particularly with friends and family. That's what I found difficult. So that's,
it's not easy, but equally, I anchor back into my memories of waking up the next morning, feeling that feeling, definitely not wanting to feel it, and definitely not wanting to have those conversations. about what potentially might have gone on.
Yes.
I'm a naturally exuberant, life-filled person. So with alcohol in me, like sometimes there'd be like, "Whoa," all kinds of things, can happen. And I just didn't want those combos. I also didn't want, as we get older, to take out more time from my life recovering
Yeah.
from something that's supposed to be an enjoyable experience.
Yeah.
So for me, it's just like it's a hard no for now.
Yeah, no, but it's good because the recovery does get it gets longer
Oh,
and longer, and it wastes, and it's frustrating because it can waste a whole
really
day, and
is.
yeah, it's annoying. Anyway, let's move on and talk about some other of those wellness practices that you've developed. Let's talk about Kundalini yoga, because
Oh, yeah.
some people listening might not have any experience of what Kundalini yoga is. So maybe you could just explain what it is, because it is quite different to a lot of what we kind of think of as yoga.
It is very different, and I got to doing it, Polly, because again, when I stopped drinking, I kind of started listening to that voice that had been saying to me, "Oh, you need to do Kundalini yoga. Kundalini yoga. You need to do Kundalini yoga." And for 3 or 4 years, I just thought to myself, "Oh, I can't do that. Like, what even is it?" Didn't have time. And I think it was actually Gabby Bernstein that used to practice Kundalini. So I think it came from that kind of sphere. So what it is as a practice, and I was so anchored in to knowing it was the right thing for me, that I signed up for my teacher training without ever having been to a class.
It's amazing.
And I just signed up. It was so funny. Literally, I want to say it was like 3 or 4 months after I stopped drinking. I then stopped drinking in the December. I think it was like the March, kind of April time, maybe a little bit later, that I searched out all of the schools with the lawyer academic brain. I was like, right, which is the best one? Where can I go? How is it going to be assessed? How can I do it? And then I just rocked up and started in the September of that year. And I would describe it as, I'd say it's like much more of a spiritual but energetic practice, because it involves all of the things that I know I really need to keep me like in a balanced, healthy, nourished state, physically, mentally, and spiritually. So we'll warm up. There'll be some classic yogic postures in there, but it's definitely not your kind of lycra clad wearing long warriors and stretching and vinyasa flows. But we do very much work powerfully with postures, and some of the activate classes that I teach are very strong. So some of those postures you'll find in there will be things that people are familiar with, that we'll do things like a cat cow, and we'll do planks. There might be some like longer holds, but it's always anchored back into the energetics within the body. And I also like to experiment and work with traditional Chinese medicine, because one of the other practices that I do to support me is acupuncture. But I love to know how, what's happening in the body energetically. So I can anchor in with those energies, but also link into the organs in the body, and also work with the seasons. So we'll have a warm up. We'll do some breath work. Breath work's always part of the practice. And there's a whole wide range of different types of pranayama that you can use to either feel calm, to release stress, to balance the body, all of those kind of things. So that's always an integral part of class. And then we'll have our movement. And that's the thing that's quite different, I think, with Kundalini, is that you'll be doing some level of repetitive movement that can be synced with breath most often. And you'll do it for certain periods of time. So for people that have busy minds, Kundalini is quite good because it allows you to really be fully present in your body. We practice with our eyes to really come into your body and kind of experience, what's happening. We also meditate, and we work with mantra. So we use chants as part of the practice, which some people might think, oh my God, that's just mortifying. Imagine doing things like that. And it's so interesting, because I think back to say the past version of me. I never would have had myself down for sitting around chanting, connecting in, using ancient Sanskrit words. But the impact that it has on the body, and also supporting our glandular system and our endocrine system, is just so notable that I can't separate myself from the actual way that the practice works. As we then also have an integration part. So most classes have a shavasana. We have that too. We'll sometimes meditate before or we'll meditate after. So it's a kind of complete energetically focused practice with that spiritual element that really helps you anchor into your self-awareness. And I think when you're busy and you've got so much going on in your life, some people go to the gym and they say that that's their thing, etc., or they may run, or they might swim, or do weights, or whatever it is. Everyone has their thing that they feel drawn to. But I think the difference with Kundalini is that it becomes this practice where you get to be the witness to yourself, you get to observe yourself, you get the opportunity to have downloads that come to you about, whatever, whether it's a question, something you're working on, a struggle, or, like I've had future kind of predictions about what I'm going to do, where I'm doing. It's like, oh yeah, you need to be doing this or that. And they come into that void, into that space that you're able to create, into that quietness. So you can either, when you finish the practice, feel super chilled, really relaxed, balanced. You'll always feel usually balanced, or you can feel like really energized. So we do an early morning practice, like you'll feel that energy all day and you'll feel it move in your body as you're practicing. So it's kind of very different, quite spiritual. When you do it in a group, the power of chanting and using mantra is just really kind of like it's next level. And also because the movement is kind of quite somatic, we hold a lot in our bodies. We hold a lot of tension, we hold emotions. And with that somatic movement, you can have release of some of those things. So lots of people initially, when they start, or if they're going through transitions or challenges, emotions or life changes, it's a really good way of releasing whatever is being stored in the body. And it kind of just happens without any preparation. So that's also been very interesting to support people with those transitions and how Kundalini and the practice works. And it's not unusual for me to get messages saying how emotional people felt or how connected they felt to themselves. And I think your average practice, your average physical form of movement and practice doesn't kind of give that.
Yeah, I totally agree. So I've attended some, not as many as I would like actually, but I've done particularly your Saturday morning classes and online, and your amazing workshop which you had with some sound healing as well. And I've got to say so that I totally agree with everything you've just said. Particularly that workshop. I remember afterwards I came back home and I was on the biggest high. I didn't need to drink any alcohol or do anything else. I was dancing around my kitchen. I was just feeling on top of the moon. And it's that gives you that feeling. It just shifts your energy and kind of raises your vibration in a way that you can't really explain. It's a practice which does all
mad,
of that.
Isn't it?
Yeah, it's amazing. It really is. And I
science.
yeah, and in a way for busy people, it is the perfect practice because you're bringing together both the sort of the physical and the spiritual, and you're just bringing all of those practices together.
It's efficient as well, Polly.
We like that. Very efficient. Yes.
You can come in, you can do all of that stuff, and a lot of people, I think, have practices, but they can be quite dispersed. And when they're dispersed, it's quite easy to not do that this morning, or I'll do that later because it's this or it's that. And quite a few of my regular yogis, they often bring their journals and their notebooks to the practice with them, so that they can note down as they go or at the end, or do a gratitude practice as part of it, or work with intention setting. It kind of like encompasses so many things. So in a way, as much as it can be challenging to make the time for yourself, once you get into the class, you are ticking off, and I don't like to see it as ticking boxes, but you are in effect a lot of the things that or I know are good for me in terms of what my body needs to feel balanced, etc., etc.
In terms of that consistency, because obviously you have throughout all of these kind of developing these practices, you have learned how to be really consistent because as we say, it's all a practice. So what would you recommend to others when they're trying to start a new practice and integrate them into their everyday, what would you suggest?
I think from my experience of working with practices, each practice is going to require something different of you. So I think the food is different, it's evolving. And I definitely don't eat now how I ate even probably a year ago. So I think you need to be kind to yourself. I think you need to understand what you need, what your body needs, and anchor in to like your why for doing it. I think that's what's really important. Because so once you experiment with practices, whether it's breath work, whether it's Kundalini, whether it's, taking time to like develop a proper sleep routine, etc. Once you have an experience and you understand that benefit, you can then link the impact of that experience with your why, and it makes you want to keep repeating it. And there's probably some kind of science out there for all of this stuff that I embark on, but I work really intuitively. Everything I do, even when I work with people one-to-one, whether it's yoga or whether it's coaching, it's very intuitive. And I think that's the other thing that I would say is we're all different. We all need different things, and we can find different ways of doing them. But once you do anchor in, say, to the standard thing of doing a yogic practice in the morning, it's like prime for setting you up for the day. It's super quiet. You integrate that as part of it. So there could be structures in your life that are already set up for it. Meal times, maybe you need to add in something more like taking some time to do meal prep or looking up what you're going to cook, etc. But for me, those kind of things have evolved. Again, I see that as part of a practice. Putting together a meal with love, choosing the ingredients, feeling a good energy around it, not feeling irritated or frustrated while I'm doing it, fully embracing that, and then taking that element of practice so that, say, if I'm going somewhere, I think ahead. What am I going to eat when I'm there? What's available to me? What am I not prepared to compromise on? Oh, okay, let's put some stuff in a jar and I'll take that with me. So it becomes, for me, like life is a practice. All of these things that I do are practices, and they don't necessarily stay the same. I might do something a bit differently compared to how I was doing it, say, 2 years ago. So I think evolve, experiment, understand yourself, think about why you want to be doing it, and also that the results are not going to be instant. So it's that kind of, it's not like when you open your Christmas present, oh my God, yes, I didn't drink last night, or oh my God, I ate a whole mound of cannellini for my breakfast, or oh, I managed to sleep like 10 hours because I did that breathwork class. You're not necessarily going to get that. It's like one of the analogies I like to use about our health, like a piggy bank. Your wellness is like that. It kind of accrues and it accrues, and you might not even be seeing it. It's not necessarily tangible what you're doing. So it might take, several weeks or a month or so, etc., of you doing something. So you need to be a little bit patient with that, and with yourself, I think, about it. Mm-hmm. So I can't just say like, oh yeah, if you do this, it's all going to be good. Because like I keep coming back to, some of my anchors are there, and it's the same with food. Like there are triggers in there that I know there are certain foods that definitely do not suit my digestion, but they're very prevalent out in the eating space, and they also are things that we associate with comfort, with either a sugar rush or something that's really deeply satisfying, or it's something that's quick. Mm-hmm. So it's very easy to think, I'm just going to have that. So it takes time. It's a process.
And I suppose it brings it back to this self-awareness again. If we're self-aware of what's going on within our bodies and we're listening to our bodies, then we're able to just notice, okay, that eating that hasn't made me feel good, or it made me sleep not very well, or
I mean, all of those things, but just you've hit the nail on the head, because actually you can eat something, can't you? And then later on, depending on the time and your digestion, your constitution, you could just literally think, oh my God, I feel exhausted, or I'm bloated, or I feel drained. So it's knowing your body. Like I know I need to have like a protein breakfast. That really works for me. Sugar or carbs, no, it's not going to happen. Eggs, loads of greens, all of that kind of stuff is all good. So I think once you tune into that, and I think that's been for me the beauty of Kundalini. It's really helped me, and I don't ever mean to sound yogic or anything like that, or enlightened, whatever. But those are the words that you kind of like work towards. The more that you practice, the more that you do feel that, the more that you do feel connected to yourself, to your intuition, to then making those choices that you feel empowered to make for yourself, regardless of what's happening around you. You know, everyone else can be doing their thing, and it can be awkward. It's not always easy, but because you know it's good for you, you can sit with the clear kind of conscience for yourself and be like, no, that's not for me. I'm going to stick with this.
Do you ever, Zoe Swan, ever find yourself falling back into any old habits? Obviously not with drink, but do you find yourself kind of
I do.
going...
Do you know what? Sometimes I'll have a pizza.
Okay.
And it's just not a great food for me. It's just not a great thing. And I will dabble with bread. I will dabble with bread. But I know that gluten takes a good time to get out of my body. And it's not really necessarily optimum for me either. So I will dabble, you know, in and out. But I just have to accept it's like the intentional drinking. It's like intentional eating, conscious eating, isn't it? It's all of this is about consciously creating the feelings that we want to have, the lifestyle, the health, etc., that we want to feel and be and whatever. And you know, there are some people that would listen to all of this and just think, oh, that's my husband for one. He literally does whatever he wants. If he wants to eat something, he will eat that thing. If he wants to have that glass of wine, he will have that glass of wine. If he wants his cigarette, he will have it. All of the things, you know. If he wants to play golf, he'll go off and play it, even if he knows he's got to have a couple of painkillers because he's getting older and he's aching. He will do all of the things. So it's not for everyone, this kind of thing, you know. It's not for everyone. And also I know that there's commentary on there about, you know, optimum feelings of wellness, and that's different for everyone, whether, you know, people are juggling long-term conditions, etc. You know, there's different levels of what could potentially feel optimum to each of us as individuals. But I fully believe in the power of food and nurturing the practices that I know kind of really support my body. And I really lean into those. I honestly really do. And I think, going back to our original intro, when I look at what's happened in my life and the shifts that have occurred just by leaning into, you know, my intuition, just trying to support myself, just feeling good, it's just been incredible. I never would have thought in a million years I'd be sitting here on a podcast with you. I wouldn't even know you, Polly, or you know, even be inviting. I have to pinch myself sometimes. I do sometimes get, you know, the little imposter syndrome thing, like, oh my God, is this really real? You know, what have I created this? And I joke about it with my husband sometimes, and it's like, no, this is real. This is all the journey. Just keep listening in and don't question it. Yeah. I would never have thought I could teach yoga classes on Zoom. I mean, seriously, what is that? That is just something that would never have crossed my mind. But the connection that I feel with people and the space that I hold and the feedback that I get, it's just like, no, it works. So don't question it. It's all good.
And what I love, Zoe, is that it just gives so many people hope, particularly midlife women who are going through this transition. Perhaps they're not feeling their best now. Perhaps they're feeling like, oh my God, is this it? Is this my life? And, you know, really feeling like it's sort of seen as a bit of a dead end. But actually, it's so isn't. And this happened for you at, you know, in your 40s.
My late 40s, and I didn't even know anything about whether this could have been the perimenopause, but I now see people talking about their second spring, and it's kind of becoming more obvious that women are really able to embrace this period in their life, and whatever that means for them. Just because I have been fortunate, I feel so far, touch wood, we never know what happens with our health, etc., in terms of what we need. I have been able to use a lot of Eastern technology and, you know, plants, nutrition, diet, yogic stuff to really support me through. Yeah, I'll use some natural progesterone. but I haven't had to. I mean, I don't know what my blood test would come up as, hormone wise, if I went to see the GP about what I needed, etc. But I know that I listen in. So if I do get any like sort of a bit of a low anxiety or something, I might just slap on an extra, B12 pad.
Mm-hmm.
Like I use some of my friends go like, what have you got on? And I just say, oh yeah, they're my B12 like things. I used to get injections because some of these symptoms that we get, having experienced them, can be because we haven't got the proper balances of nutrients in our
Yeah.
body. For me, especially going through perimenopause, I didn't realize this until I had a conversation with my acupuncturist about it, and have been studying yoga therapy, is that you can do a lot with eating cooling foods. So seaweeds and taking spirulina tablets, or like the powder, are really good. Making sure that you have a regular source of magnesium, whether it's in a capsule form, or you also have it as part of your bath time regime.
Last week on the podcast, I had Marion Stewart, who is sort of a bit of a pioneer in the menopause space, and she's looked at so much research, and there is so much research now to suggest that a majority of midlife women are nutritionally depleted
Yeah.
because of the life load, because if you've had a child and you've breastfed, we're kind of hitting this stage with all of our nutrients at their lowest. She's convinced that so many of these menopause symptoms are because of that, and once you start putting them back into your body, then actually it really helps those symptoms subside. And everything you're saying, it kind of totally matches up to that.
For sure, I fully believe that, and I try where possible to eat lots of plants, eat some fish occasionally, get organic food so it's nutrient dense. And interestingly, I don't suffer from flushes and things, and I'm sure a lot of those elements can be controlled by the diet and the cooling stuff. And I regularly have
Yeah.
I go for acupuncture probably every 3 weeks to a month, and that also works really nicely to get things in balance. But I definitely hear you on the depletion, and if you're stressed and you're eating, your digestion is not going to be optimum. No matter what you're eating, if you're eating in a stressed way, or the body is in continual low level stress, it's not going to optimize the nutrition that you're putting in. So I listen into that, and I'll use some pads or take some extra vitamins, etc. Quite intuitively. I haven't had my levels done or anything like that, but I notice with how I'm feeling. And I think for people that don't eat meat, like I haven't eaten meat since I was about 13. So a B12 is going to be something that you need to make sure you have. And it's just cultivating that awareness. If I look back, sitting in that Buddhist center, I never thought any of these things could transpire. I literally just wanted to stay in my job. I didn't even know about perimenopause. I didn't even know that I could become a yoga teacher or a health coach or work with clients and see the amazing transitions that they have. So everything, whoever is listening to this, if you need to hear it and you think it's like really tough, there are so many things that you can do to support yourself. It doesn't have to be a shit show.
It certainly doesn't. I've got one quick question before we finish. Yeah. Is about, you talked about progesterone cream. So a natural progesterone cream. Can you just tell me a bit about that? Because I don't know much about that.
It's really, really interesting, because I think I got onto that because I suffered from endometriosis. And interestingly, one of the students that I used to teach, she was an international student, we had conversations about it. And I thought, I wonder what that is, because she also suffered from endometriosis. And I thought, I'm going to explore what that is. And the cream that I use, I think I want to say it's from Wellsprings. And it's literally just a white cream. It says it's called natural progesterone. I haven't done loads of deep work around it, other than I know that it works.
So to finish, Zoe, I ask all my guests, because this is called the Positive Perimenopause Podcast, I like to give them sort of one small takeaway which they can kind of put into practice today. Is there something you could recommend for them to do that?
I think my something has got to be where it all started for me, and it would be experimenting with some form of meditation. That's what I think. Whether it's challenging for you, if you're doing something that's challenging. I've had clients come to me and say they don't like meditating, they can't do it. maybe that's because they've previously used rigid ways of doing it, or they think there's a set way of being or doing it. I just think, please know that there is something out there, and the benefits of doing that, not just for your mind and your soul, but also just for your hormone production and feeling, balanced and creating that extra bit of space. For me, it's like a no-brainer. And you start to do that each day for a couple of minutes, and then just see how that feels in a week, 2 or 3. When I first started meditating, I remember not saying anything to anyone. I knew I had to find something that helped me feel good. And I think after 3 weeks, this was obviously when I was drinking, we went into 10 Green Bottles in Brighton, and I sat with my husband, and I remember him looking at me and him saying, "What are you doing? You just seem different. Like, what is happening?" I was beside myself with glee, obviously ego driven at that point. God, can you tell? And he was like, "Yeah, what are you doing?" And I was like, "Well, I'm just meditating twice a day, And it was like, wow. And so and you start to notice that you can become less reactive, that you maybe don't need to say, that you can observe. So I think that would be my top tip. And if anyone wants to try, they are so welcome to reach out to me and drop in and experience a free gifted Kundalini class practice.
Oh, that's amazing. So yes, tell everybody where they can find you and all the things you've got going on. You've got a retreat coming up. You've got a membership. So tell everybody tell everybody.
I've got a retreat coming up in September, which is going to be down in Cornwall. So everything's on my website, which I know Polly will sync and link up in the pod details. It's the Practice of Wellbeing. So you can find details of the retreat there. I also run 4 weekly yoga classes, which they're all themed. Anyone that's listening just needs to drop me a DM and say that they heard the pod with Polly, and I'll send you a link, and you can join either all 4 classes, or you can pick the one that most appeals to you. I also have a monthly membership that includes coming to all of the yoga classes, recorded practices, and other recorded practices in the membership space, which includes full moon, all of those kind of things, recipes and bits and pieces for specifics. And then I do one-to-one coaching, whether it's with a Kundalini focus or with a holistic Kundalini health coaching, wellness focus. I do that. And if you're listening, I don't think you are, but I really hope you are, and you're a corporate person, I can also work with you too, because we all need to support the women in our workplace that are experiencing perimenopause or menopause. So there we go.
Thank you so much, Zoe. It's always a pleasure to chat to you and just tap into your incredible wisdom and knowledge and share your very inspirational journey. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for giving me the space. It's been amazing to chat to you, Polly. So sending you big love. And I'll see you on the mat soon.
Yes, definitely. Thank you.
Big love.
I will put all of Zoe's details in the show notes. And I really recommend that retreat. I would definitely be going if I could. I'm away that weekend, but it will be truly amazing. I just want to thank you for your time. I know how busy you all are, and it means the world to me that you are taking the time to listen to this podcast. And if you are listening and you would like to leave a review, or you'd like to share it with a friend, and because you feel it might help them, I would be so grateful, because all of that really, really helps. On Spotify, you can't leave a review, but you can subscribe, and that is amazing. Or on Apple Podcasts, you can actually leave a review, and I really do love getting those reviews. So thank you if you've already done that. And if you'd like to take the time, I'd be very, very grateful. And as always, I love hearing your thoughts and your comments. So please feel free to get in touch via Instagram or via email. All the details are in the show notes. So that's it for this week. Have another wonderful week, and I will speak to you next week. Have a good week. Bye.